Hello, everyone. I'm Tanya Rivero. Thank you for joining us. The results are in. Most major races from last night's general elections have projected winners, except for the gubernatorial contest in New Jersey. CBS News says it is still a toss-up between incumbent Democratic Governor Phil Murphy and his challenger, Republican Jack Ciattarelli. Murphy holds a slight lead with 85% of the vote tabulated. Meanwhile, in Virginia, Democratic candidate Terry McAuliffe has conceded, as CBS News projects Republican Glenn Youngkin the winner. The loss is a sharp rebuke to Democrats after President Biden won the Commonwealth by 10 percentage points last year. CBS News' Michael George has more on the Election Day results.
A day after New Jersey voters went to the polls, the governor's race has yet to be decided.
We're going to wait for every vote to be counted.
Incumbent Democrat Phil Murphy is locked in a dead heat with Republican Jack Ciattarelli. Murphy ran on his record of managing the pandemic, while Ciattarelli focused on the economy and education.
I'm convinced that together we can fix this state. We can fix it.
New Jersey is normally a solid blue state, so the fact the race is this tight is a disappointment for Democrats, especially on top of the defeat they suffered in Virginia.
My fellow Virginians, this is our moment.
Republican Glenn Youngkin beat Democrat Terry McAuliffe for governor in a state President Biden won easily last year.
This is a different state. When Ralph and I were elected 8 years ago, we have made our state open and welcoming, but the fight continues.
Voters said jobs and the economy were the top issues facing the state. McAuliffe's campaign tried tying Youngkin to former President Trump, but it didn't work. The loss could spell trouble for President Biden and Democrats ahead of next year's midterm elections.
When you talk about education, the economy, and what's going on with Biden and Democrats in the Congress, those suburban voters are approachable and gettable if you're a Republican not named Donald Trump.
And in Minneapolis, voters rejected an amendment to replace the city's police department with a new agency in the wake of George Floyd's murder. Michael George, CBS News, Jersey City.
To further discuss these election results, I want to bring in Joel Benenson. He's the founder and CEO of Benenson Strategy Group. Joel was also a senior strategist for Hillary Clinton and former President Obama's pollster in 2008 and 2012. Joel, welcome. Great to have you with us. So we're talking about two blue states that President Biden won. Do the results of these two gubernatorial races surprise you?
Well, I don't think anybody could really call Virginia a blue state. It's always been a battleground state. It's one of the 13 or so that in presidential elections is important for Democrats to win. There's no question Democrats have been doing better in that state in most of this century, 20-some years in. But last night was a rough night for former Governor McAuliffe. He really did not perform well with centrist voters. I've been saying since 2020, the key to Biden's win, President Biden's win, was that he outperformed Hillary Clinton with voters that are independent or moderate by about 12 points over where Hillary was 4 years earlier. Those are voters that McAuliffe had done well with the last time he ran for governor, but he lost independents in Virginia last night by 9 points. He lost moderates by 20 points. I have to believe that his comment on education was particularly problematic, and it cost him with those groups that are center and pretty centrist that you need to win in states like Virginia. New Jersey is a little less of a swing state, although one of the things we're watching here could be a little bit of history. If Phil Murphy holds on, which I think he's going to, looking at where the votes are coming in from, he'd be the first Democratic governor in 40 years to be elected to 2 consecutive terms.
So you got into some of this exit polling with these key groups. I want to dig a little deeper. CBS News' numbers show that a majority of independents who favored President Biden in 2020 went with Youngkin this time around. Key issues for them were education and the economy. How significant is this a swing for the Democratic Party overall, and what does it say about midterms?
Well, look, I think it should definitely set off alarm bells for Democrats in midterms, and they should be very mindful, particularly in states and districts that are more swing districts. The reality for both parties is that you don't win win from the extreme left wing of the Democratic Party or the extreme right wing of the Republican Party. You have to moderate to be successful in these bigger elections. And the Democrats are going to have an uphill fight in the midterms also because of some significant partisan gerrymandering that takes place in the drawing of the district line. So you have to, if we are going to be successful in the midterms, we are going to have to win over voters in the middle and do a better job of it, talk to them about their lives, the things that we can do that will benefit their children, their families. And I think, Terry McAuliffe, I think his comment on education was especially costly. Can't tell parents that they don't belong in schools. It's the most important issue I've seen in election after election, right along with the economy when you talk about what issues matter most to voters, particularly suburban voters, which Joe Biden did very well with in 2020.
So, Joel, earlier today, the Republican Congressional Committee said it is expanding the number of House races that it is targeting in the midterms. Does it appear that Republicans believe they've found a winning formula here of sort of keeping Mr. Trump at arm's length, as Youngkin did in Virginia, but not completely, cutting him off, a sort of a delicate balance? Do Republicans believe that that could be a winning strategy for now?
Well, they may. I'm sure that they will dissect, Governor-elect Youngkin's success in Virginia and see if that's where they land. I don't know that that'll be a formula all over America, keeping in mind that, Donald Trump got the lowest share of popular vote of any Republican president elected since about sometime in the 1980s, 84 or 88. So, I think both parties need to think about what we have to do to win these swing constituencies. And for Democrats, particularly since that we're going to face some very tough district lines that we have to run with going into this cycle, where there's been a lot of very partisan gerrymandering, we are definitely going to have to broaden our reach. We have to win the middle to win elections in this country. I say it every time I talk to Democrats. The country is neither left nor right. It is much more centrist than people on the extremes of both parties think.
I do want to point out, though, in the exit polling that CBS News has collected, 95% of voters for Youngkin say they have a positive view of former President Trump. Is that a higher percentage than you would have expected?
No, he did very well with Republicans. I mean, both and with conservatives. I think he got 92% of conservative votes. He's got a fairly conservative Republican electorate there that supported him in huge numbers. But I think that time will tell what will be the overriding issue. I think that Trump is a problem for the Republican Party. We did research that showed that 1 out of 5 Republicans believe that with Donald Trump at the head of the party is too extreme for voters like them. I think that's going to be played out. And I think Republicans in the midterms, and I think Republicans are going to have to monitor that very carefully, whether at the end of the day, in these midterm elections, Donald Trump will be a positive or a negative. But at the end, it also comes down to candidates. Candidates win elections, not surrogates. And we've got to put up the kind of candidates who will appeal, particularly in these congressional districts and swing states, to a broader swath of the electorate.
Good point. And Joel, meanwhile, Democrats are still working on their spending packages in Washington, which some say that the fact that they haven't gotten that done yet hurt, Democrats in these races. Do you see any parallels between this and the passage of the Affordable Care Act in 2010?
Look, there's a great saying. Some philosopher once said, history doesn't really repeat itself, but it often rhymes. I think that if you're going to get big things done, what you have to do is make sure you're communicating what the essence of those things are in people's daily lives. And I think talking about the size of the spending packages, the overall breadth of them, is less powerful than finding the 2 or 3 things that really connect to people's lives. And I think President Biden has some of those in his infrastructure package. He needs to talk about making sure there's clean water coming out of every tap in America, so no parent ever has to worry about whether their child's drinking clean water, that in America, no school child should have to do their homework on a school bus because we can't get internet to their rural communities. That's outrageous in the United States of America, the greatest country on earth. And those are issues that are plaguing parents in terms of education, health. They're small, and people criticized other candidates at times for talking about small bore issues. You may remember President Clinton, but those things are actually very big issues in people's lives. And that's what Democrats have to do to win. When we connect with people about their daily lives and their families and their children and their futures, we will win.
Joel Benenson, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your perspective.
Thanks for having me.